All right. So thanks everyone for being here. I am so excited to be welcoming Sean back. He spoke last month about UX and AI. Had so much good feedback from both the viewers and also from Sean that he offered to do another presentation. And so I would be crazy to say no. And we're super excited to be welcoming him. So Sean, thank you so much for being here. For those who weren't here or don't know you, do you want to start just by introducing yourself? I wouldn't do justice to your track record, but yes, Sean, thank you so much for being here.
Sure, it's my pleasure, CJ. A little bit of my background: I have been working in enterprise software for 20 plus years, mostly around user experience on the technology side of the house or customer experience on the product market side of the house. In the last few years, I've really been focusing on AI, specifically how AI is working around UX, CX, and product. I have a blog at seanvantyne.com where if you want to read my musings on AI, UX, and CX, please do. We did a talk last month, CJ and I did, on AI and UX, and it was actually McKinsey that I did a report on AI-driven the product development lifecycle, and I wrote a blog based on the McKinsey. CJ and I were talking about it, and we thought it'd be a fun thing to talk about here. So that's me. Any questions before we dive in?
Yeah, and this is meant to be interactive. So if anyone has any questions, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. I'll be watching that, and then or if you don't want to say anything, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that as well. So.
All right. Well, just to set the table, let's talk a little bit about what is artificial intelligence, also known as AI. Some of you may know that the term AI was coined at Stanford in 1955 by John McCarthy. And when John coined the term, he said, artificial intelligence is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. Now you got to remember, it's 1955, there's no computers. But what I did was I did a kind of a conflation of the modern day IBM, International Business Machines, and Google's definition of AI just for this talk. And I kind of conflated it into this AI-enabled technologies, which is really the topic of today's talk, can simulate human learning, which includes comprehension, problem solving, and decision-making, including those abilities to analyze data, make recommendations, and as we know with AI agents, just a whole lot more. But let me pause because I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Is there any other questions or comments that anyone wants to share about the definition, or at least the modern definition of AI or AI-enabled technologies?
I'll make a comment real quickly that I'm noticing that people don't always know what they mean by AI. That some people are now referring to just regular software as being AI because software can imitate human behavior, even if it's not built on any kind of machine learning or natural language processing. So there's a sort of colloquial mythology. What's the word I'm looking for there? But it's turning into something it's not.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think whenever we introduce a new technology, and even though, like I just said, AI actually goes back to 1955, modern AI, that's really been in the news lately, especially around Gen AI or AI agents, which is kind of where we're at today. It's all evolving very quickly. And yeah, there's a lot of, just like with any other technology, do you remember the internet and browsers, and people didn't know the difference between what the internet was and what a browser was? I think we're kind of there with AI, where people just really don't know what it is, which is, by the way, why I started this conversation with a little bit of the history of the origin of it, and at least a term we can hang a hat on for this conversation. Thank you for that. Anything else anyone wants to share around our modern evolving definition of artificial intelligence or AI-enabled technologies? Okay. Well, then I'm going to jump to the product development lifecycle, or at least what it is currently today. This particular diagram comes to us via Gartner, Lean Startup, and McKinsey. I'm sure you've seen all kinds of software development life cycles. This particular one talks about product development life cycle being in 4 phases of discover, validate, build, launch, and scale. In the discover phase, which is the first phase, is when we come up with a vision and a strategy. We do the early design thinking, that first diamond, if you're familiar with the double diamond of empathizing, that is basically coming to understand who our target audience is, defining who they are, like with things like personas, and ideating on solutions. And then once we feel comfortable with that, we move into the second phase of the product development lifecycle, which is also the second diamond of design thinking, where we then run experiments, we learn, we prototype, we iterate, we measure what's going on, and then we adjust and pivot because, you know, things change. And then once we feel comfortable about it, we go ahead, write some requirements, put them in a product backlog, sprint planning begins, they start sprinting, writing code, building stuff, release and deploy, test, iterate, do sprint reviews, hopefully do a retrospect also. I'm a big fan of the agile ceremonies. And then that goes into the last phase of launching and scaling. So there's adoption, there's support, there is all kinds of tools now that we use to analyze the product usage, like Google Analytics, and we iterate again, and that goes back around into discovery. I'm going to pause again and see if anyone has any comments around the current product development lifecycle, or at least how it's represented here by Gartner, Lean, and McKinsey. All right. So what happens when we take these AI-enabled technologies? What happens to the lifecycle? So McKinsey just wrote an interesting article about this, which is where this all came from. And they're predicting that there's going to be a conflation of the traditional 4 phases into 2 more rapid phases, where discovery and validation are going to conflate together and build and launch are going to conflate together. And they're predicting it's going to look something like this. And the first phase of this AI-driven product development lifecycle, there will be discovery, validation, and experiment. So still the vision and the strategy, but it'll include both the first and last part of design thinking, so empathizing, ideating, experimenting, and learning. Obviously, requirements will come out of that, and it'll go into the second phase, which conflates the building and the launching of the product. So the coding, the testing, release and deploying, the adoption, and again, the usage and the supporting analytics. I'm going to pause again, to catch any ahs in the audience. But if there's no questions, we're going to jump in and talk about how this is going to change things. Any questions or comments about what McKinsey is predicting the new model of AI-driven product development lifecycle is going to be? Okay. So let's talk about some fundamental changes that are going to take place now that things are AI-driven. So the first thing, which are going to make the people in marketing a lot happier, is that you should be able to get your product to market quicker, because the new AI tools are going to, conflate the whole life cycle, like we talked about, from the 4 to the 2 phases. One of the things that we're seeing already today is that AI is really good at automating those routine tasks that we hate to do. And you're seeing AI tools automating tasks across, all the roles. So market analysis, project management, the testing, feedback analysis, and thank God documentation, because who likes to do documentation? I shouldn't say that. There might be some writers in the audience. The other thing that, since the tasks are going to be automated, it's going to create more time. And with there being more time, the teams should be able to create more better informed iterations to really dial in the product market fit earlier on in the product life cycle. Think about the first diamond or the first phase, before we start writing code. The other thing that we're going to get faster to market about is the new tools. Some of these tools exist already, where we'll be able to respond faster to market trends and customer feedback, which will hopefully create a better customer experience. And you're seeing some of these platforms now that are specifically around their platforms or experience platforms, where they are monitoring visitors and how they go across the product, and then can provide real-time feedback. I'm going to pause. Does anyone want to share anything about some of their experiences where they're using AI tools to automate some of their tasks around market analysis or project management, or how they have gotten more time to iterate their ideas, or have used any of the AI tools that give more real-time customer feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy, all the amount of tools available for all of the above. For me, my kind of workflow, especially on kind of the market analysis side, like Perplexity has been really good. Especially if you really kind of getting down, you can kind of do an academic focus on things. So whether it's learning about like specific, trends or a specific market, to be able to get like competitors and things like that is really interesting. And as far as like the ideation, I've always loved like ChatGPT to be able to, use as a kind of brainstorming partner to really kind of flesh out like some basic ideas. And, while the results have been have been really good, part of the superpower of that is it kind of gives you ability to think and to be able to, expand on your, on your ideas. And so, it just what it elicits out of you and how to explain it to a chatbot, to an LLM, really does a good job on like kind of fleshing out like some of those ideas that, you wouldn't otherwise get. So, it actually like extracts some information out of you. So it's pretty interesting. That's some of the things that I've used.
Yeah, thank you. I've had the same experience. I think there's kind of like so much to this. The first part of it is, these Gen AI tools are tools, and the better that you understand the tool and what using the right tool for the right task, an AI tool is just the same. So really, it's about prompt engineering and being able to ask the right prompt to get you where you need to get. I have also experienced this thing where research that would normally take me days, I can now do in hours with Gen AI, because it does a lot of the heavy lifting for me, especially around the routine stuff of comparison and analysis. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, for me, what would normally take days is now taking hours. Thank you. Any other questions or comments about how AI tools is getting us faster to market in the product development lifecycle?
Yeah, please chime in, anybody, because I don't want to be the only one talking. But beyond that, obviously the trend of vibe coding and just the crazy capacity that these LLMs have for just spitting out code and kind of getting a prototype or kind of a proof of concept.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. The other advantage we're getting with AI-driven product development lifecycle is the product delivers a customer value sooner. So in the more traditional model, not only does it take it longer to get get it to market longer, but also customers seeing value takes longer. And there are several reasons for that. One of them is that AI tools now, sophisticated AI tools, can stitch together the data from various sources. So they could take telemetry data with service ticket data and combine that with support feedback data. And then you can see kind of the whole end-to-end data feed, at least around the customer and kind of what they're doing. There's very few tools that I know that do it. None of them do it well yet, but just like anything else, it's going to evolve and it's going to get even better. The other thing that we're seeing is how the AI tools integrate with real-time customer input. And what I mean by that is what's going on in social media, sentiment analysis, direct customer interactions, and comparing that to any competitive research, along with the historical data and the ability to take the two and compare them. AI can do quite well. I think it's a stretch to call it real time. I think real time is more futuristic, unless someone knows a tool that can do it in real time. I think you can do some of it in real time, like comparing sentiment data to historic data, like some of these things. I don't think there's a tool that can do it all yet, but that is definitely on the horizon. And obviously, if you're gaining more, faster, actionable insights, it can help you be more customer-centric throughout the whole process. I'm going to pause again and see if anyone has anything to share about, their experience working with AI tools that have been integrating the customer feedback and the product usage into the development cycle.
Yeah, Tony just chimed in on the text, said, by futuristic, we now mean 2027.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Tony. If you guys are familiar with Moore's law, Moore was an IBMer who, he was looking at the size of circuit boards, and he was saying about how those circuit boards were going to get smaller and faster. They'd be able to take on more information. But the expansion of Moore's law is this idea that technology is evolving at an exponential rate, which I believe is true. And at the top of this wave is AI, and AI is at such a crazy rate. I remember it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about when are we going to have like true sentient AI, and it wasn't that long ago people were saying, well, that'll never happen. And then and then shortly after that, it was like maybe in 50 years, and then it was like, well, maybe in 20 years, and now people are saying like maybe in 10 years. So it's crazy that this is all happening so fast at an exponential rate.
Yeah, and if anyone kind of has their mind blown about in question whether AI is sentient, I recommend you check out Sesame AI. It's sesame.com, and they have a research prototype that you can demo, and it is quite uncanny in talking with the chat bot or the person on the other end.
Agent.
So agent, yeah, I know, right? What do you call it? But and they just actually open sourced their model or version of their model. But if anyone wants to really kind of question their what they know about AI and sentience, I recommend sesame.com, and they have a research demo to check out.
The other advantage we're going to see by using these AI tools, we'll be able to, like we've already talked about, we'll be able to do more prototypes and testing. We're going to be doing faster. And the great thing about, and prototyping is kind of my jam. The great thing about being able to make more, better, faster prototypes and to test them is more good ideas will see the light of day. And what I mean by that is that product teams should be able to run more experiments. And by running more experiments, the odds of a promising idea will come to the surface, because obviously if you're running more experiments, you're going to get more results, and the better the possibility of finding good ideas. The other thing is that AI can also help us analyze the data set and be the unbiased element in the conversation. The reason I emphasize this is because I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience, but if you're at a small company, sometimes it's the CEO, or if you're at a larger company, sometimes it's someone else, an executive in the organization that can kind of trump what actually data says. Like, well, the data says this, and they don't care what the data says because they're going to want to do it this way. But I think with AI, because we're going to have so much good data, it'll be harder for people to argue against the data, which also leads to that once we make a strategic decision, AI can also help us monitor those metrics continuously and evaluate it. I'm going to pause again and see if there's anything anyone wants to share about this idea, how AI, specifically around prototype and testing, is going to increase our ability to find more good ideas, keep us more data-driven and data-focused, and also help us more quickly monitor the metrics around those ideas.
I'm gonna chime in, and I'm gonna say that, like, honestly, I think that there's a huge problem with data, and it's been something that's been around for a long time, and that is the data isn't clean. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a project at a different company, and their data is bad, and they don't take the time to clean it up, make it right before pushing forward, or unless they have a data warehouse process and teams cleaning up that data to feed to AI and sentiment analysis. There's a lot of bad data, and I think that's the first step. And you're only going to be as good as the data you put in. And unfortunately, there's a tremendous amount of bad data out there. I mean, I see it all the time.
Amen to that. Last month when we were talking about AI and UX and UX and AI, that was actually one of the points that I brought up, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If you start with bad data, no good is going to come from that, right? So
yep, absolutely.
You need to have good data. The data set has to be accurate. It has to be up to date. It has to be clean. And the human, the data scientist that's writing algorithms, has to understand that data, write the good algorithms. And there's a whole machine learning cycle that goes on about how you gather the data, how you clean the data, how you divide up the data set, how the algorithms work with the data. If we have any data scientists in the audience, they can go into more detail than I can. But I did my tour of duty at FICO.
Yeah. So I mean, I think honestly, before it gets to the data scientists, the data needs to be cleaned up, right? A lot of this stuff is a manual cleanup or cleanup from whatever app or wherever you're gathering the data. So I think it honestly really relies more or sits more on a data engineer who's looking at the data, putting it into the models and the structure. The other ones are actually touching the data first. They're the ones who probably, are going to be the ones who are going to identify. And unfortunately, I've seen and experienced a lot of pushback in many different clients of mine to where they don't want to clean up the data. Some do, but most of them don't. And so again, garbage in, garbage out. It's unfortunate, but that's where it needs to happen. The data scientist shouldn't be cleaning it up. That's the last final step, right?
In some cases, they don't even have a data engineer, right? Like they take
right, and you need that. I mean, that's step one.
Yep. They take the data that came out of whatever their system was, and then they throw it into the next system. Yep.
Yeah, and it's horrible data, and they get horrible results, and then they wonder why the numbers aren't right. Well, I'll tell you what, not right. I mean, just simple things is like even down to like making sure your states are all the same and are all coming from a related table. Like I can't tell you how many times I've seen that not be the case.
Yeah.
And free-handed data or data that's not validated or corrected. I mean, if it's not accurate going in, not filtered at the app level, not cleaned up during your ETL or ELT process, it's going to be bad for the scientist. The scientist is going to essentially, see the data and he's going to just be like, well, it doesn't match, I don't care, instead of getting it cleaned up, right?
Yeah, depending on the scientist, but
sure,
that's a good caveat to. We're only going to get more good ideas if we have good data. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and you never know if something like an AI agent could do something like that, eventually as well. So that's kind of an interesting use case. We have George with a hand raised. George.
Yeah, thank you. I want to expound on that thought process, not just from data, but processes as well. So as we have all these tools that can help automate and scale up your ability to create like documentation or just all these tedious things, I think making such things easier for project timelines presents perhaps a vulnerability to, not the best behavior being kind of covered up because you are meeting project timelines by, some bottlenecks in tasks occur because it's just poorly planned or poorly designed, or it's kind of like the same talk of garbage in, garbage out. And rather than taking the time to refactor and all that, you can simply almost brute force through it by making the generative AI or whatever documentation done with what you have. And I think that presents some it might be a back step into being able to prototype quality things moving forward. I don't know if you guys have any experiences with that or have seen something like that.
Yes, and I completely agree, right? So these tools are tools, and if you don't know how to use the tool and you don't use it well, you're not going to get good results. So I'm a big proponent of human in the loop, and I think those people that know how to use the tools are craftsmen, right? They know their craft, they're an expert in the particular area that they do, and they see AI as a tool that can, for me, usually gets me like 80 or 90% there. But because I'm a master at my craft, I know what the other 10 or 20% that the human has to do, to polish it for final results. But you're right.
What happens when, so in corporate world and all that, it's the priority is to project timelines and all that, right? Rather than necessarily like reliability and quality, because you are at that prototyping phase. You're trying to hit that market release phase. What are your thoughts on, like, how do we, that's the concern that I'm seeing, where people are leveraging AI to fill in the gap of clarity, because maybe the incoming tasks or the direction isn't clear to them, but it is, they could make something useful out of it or create documentation through generative AI, and they're like, okay, this makes sense. This is done, and I think the fear I have is that it creates a homogeny of thought, of approaches that might not be the best for prototyping when you want to, and experimenting when you want to include as many diversity of thoughts and approaches to solutions, or different types of solution approaches to a problem.
It's important to keep the human in the loop. And when it comes to projects, if there's any project managers in the audience, we all know there's three factors. There's time, quality, and resources. Pick two, because you can't have all three. So if you're crunched on time or resources, quality is going to fail. Or if you're really focused on quality, then you have to increase your resources, or at least spend more money on resources, quality resources, but then you're sacrificing time. So every project, you need to think about those three factors and decide which two are more important to you. Any other questions about ideas to market? The next thing I want to talk about is this idea that the product manager can finally become the product CEO, which is kind of the nirvana if you're a product manager, to be the CEO of your product. And a lot of product managers strive to do that, but their biggest challenge is that to actually have the whole end-to-end oversight from ideation to value realization is huge. And product managers today have to rely on armies to be able to help them with all aspects of these phases. And also just the stuff, just the documentations they need to create. So like, for example, just the marketing collateral, like the one pager or the pitch deck, they'll spend hours or days on that. But with something like an AI tool, they can rapidly prototype and produce those, even quicker, or a quick proof of concept that then they can share with either a product designer or a product developer or both, or an architect, to get their ideas out quicker, so that they can get through the process quicker. Also, that gets into this idea of moving an idea from conception to demo more rapidly and have a more end-to-end accountability, because the 4 phases have been conflated to 2 phases. And one that I'm seeing already, it's become ubiquitous, is, I guess other than this meeting, it's rare that I've ever been in a meeting now in the last few months where there wasn't an AI taking notes. And the nice thing about having an AI note taker is that, especially if you're like a product manager or a product person, you can distribute those notes, not only keep everyone on the same page, but also can help coach people in understanding what the product value is, and keep everyone up to speed on the project. I'm going to pause, especially because I know we have a product manager in the audience today. Anyone want to share anything about how AI is helping the product manager to be more of the product CEO? Lily?
I'm just trying to catch up, Sean. I'm trying to catch up on how it's being used in the market, and that's why I always look to you of what the latest in technology is happening.
Are you using any AI tools, Lily?
Currently, right now I'm unemployed, so I'm using AI with regard to job searching.
There you go. It's good for that too.
Oh, it's great. What am I missing on my resume compared to
Yes.
this job description?
Yeah. LinkedIn has it built in now. Okay. All right. Anyone else want to comment on this idea of the product manager can finally realize the nirvana of being the product CEO?
We had a hand raised from Luke. Luke, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so I think frankly, like the direction that things are moving, these kind of opportunities of like owning the product as a whole is not just like an opportunity for like PMs. I would say that frankly, anyone in the product development process can, as these AI tools are becoming more diverse and specialized and better at certain things, they can kind of account for their weaknesses so that, I think that you're just going to hear more and more of like these solopreneurs that
Yes.
are going to be responsible for every stage of the process. Like they use AI for marketing, they use AI for design and development and launch and everything like that. I don't know who in the audience might be familiar with Teresa Torres's framework of a product trio, like a designer, a PM, and a developer. But like if you are specialized in one of those, like let's say you're a developer, but like, hey, my weakness is in design and my weakness is in product management. Like I don't know, how to grow the product, what to do about that. And I also don't know how to design it. Like AI tools are getting better at design. They're going to continue to get better at product management. So like kind of theoretically, very little is stopping you from launching a product by yourself. And we see more and more of these solopreneurs that are being in charge of every stage of the product development cycle. And, obviously the smart ones will like delegate and like hire a team later on. But I think it's a really exciting time because no matter what your specialty is, like you don't have to be a PM to, kind of own your own product like this and have those big aspirations. I think that as the tools are just getting better and better, it's going to accommodate more of each person's weaknesses, so that everyone can own more of the process.
I'm definitely seeing that. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that. Yeah, I've heard we've talked about vibe coding. Another term I've heard is product builder, referring to kind of what you're talking about, a solopreneur that knows enough about product, that knows enough about design, knows enough about coding, that they can use AI tools to, help them with every step in the process. I've, especially in the last few weeks or few months, I've talked to some of these solopreneurs who said, yeah, what would normally have taken a small team a few months, I can do by myself in a few weeks, which is crazy. But I think for those who have the aptitude, the tenacity, and the skills, again, these are tools, so you do have to have knowledge before you use the tools. But yeah, I think that's a real thing. Any other questions or comments about the product manager being the CEO of their product, or this idea of the solopreneur that can do it all with these tools?
Yeah, so we have a hand raised, but first I'm going to read a chat from Lily's message. She said, I agree with Luke's comment about being able to own more of the process. And my humorous mind started to think he was going to go into a quote, a designer, a product manager, and a developer walked into a bar. All right. So
There's definitely a joke there.
Yep. So we have George with a hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering for the solopreneurs that you guys talked to. So you talked about the time, resource, and quality trio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen? So if you're decreasing on resources because you have, it's a solo, and you're increasing on time to market because it's one person's thing. Have you seen dips in quality because of that?
Yeah, you can't have all three. What you can do is extend your time so you can focus more on quality.
Gotcha. Do you think there's like a plateau because of the amount of resources you've saved on? Because it's a solopreneur, it's
yeah. If you've ever heard of the mythic man month, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that still applies, right? If you're one person doing everything, you still need to sleep and eat and do other things that humans need to do, right?
So for those solopreneurs, is it like that's for prototyping and they scale it up with a bigger team? How does I'm not really anything. I don't know anything about prototyping.
I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it's really great for definitely MVPs. A solopreneur can do an MVP in a short amount of time, and I've seen it done. I just wrote a blog. My last blog I wrote yesterday. I posted it yesterday, called Product Builders. It was actually inspired by an article that Stu Green wrote, and it's about exactly that.
All right,
Cool.
we have another hand. Oh, Georgia, do you have something that you wanted
Oh,
to
thank you
conclude?
for that. I was just appreciating it.
Okay.
Cool.
Luke.
Yeah, I just had one more thought, because Sean, at the end of what you said was like, you can be more involved in the process and all these things. You have to have the knowledge going into it. But I think in my head, I thought like, I don't even know if that's true, that you need to have the knowledge going into it. In a lot of cases, right? Because I think that you can acquire a lot of knowledge as you go. And obviously, this is not going to be true in all situations. Like, I'm not saying that you should use AI to write like really poor quality code and destroy your product or something. But I think from my experience so far, like, I guess I'll give you a little bit of my background. Is I'm a product designer, and before 2025, I had never written line of code, other than maybe I did like Hello World one time. But now the things that I'm able to build using these AI tools, like I had zero knowledge of these before, and now I've acquired some knowledge as I've gone on. But I really think that as present day, like you can acquire knowledge as you go, and you don't have to have like an abundance of knowledge going in, and that'll just continue to improve as the tools improve. And like I really think at the end of the day, all you need is like ambition, curiosity, and grit. Like, you know, I
That's
really think
interesting,
that,
Luke, because
yeah.
all of the people that I've talked to that have kind of, you know, moved into the solopreneur product builder role came from product design or had a strong product design background. And it does seem that, and I think a lot of it, I'm going to get real philosophical here, but I think a lot of it has to do with the type of personality that gets involved in design. And of course, I have a bias, has all those characteristics that you were talking about. They have curiosity, they have tenacity, they have grit. So they're curious enough to explore, and they have the tenacity to kind of stick through with it, with the tools. So when they don't get the exact result, they'll continuous learning, I think, is also a big part of being a designer. So I think if you come, and again, I have a bias, if you're coming from the design mindset, you can make that leap and to start, you know, developing your own your own MVPs. I'm not saying that a developer isn't also curious and doesn't have tenacity and could easily start using some of the design tools that are out there for AI. And I've definitely seen product managers, you know, use tools for design. But like I said, just from my limited experience, and I only have a few data sets, the people I know were product designers first, and they've been using AI tool to write codes to make MVPs, to your point.
Yep. And it has really democratized things. And, you know, being a product designer from a, you know, having that background is kind of gives you a leg up, especially in this world. And, you know, there are tools out there that can do like Figma that can export to basically become a full stack app. So it's just amazing. It's democratized that. So that's, you position yourself well. We have another hand raised, Jeff Taylor.
Hey, so my question is, have you really found tools or good tools out there to do the rapid prototyping? Like, what are some of the good ones out there? I mean, because I've used several, you know, AI platforms, but I haven't really seen one that has been, I don't know, I guess quality enough. I always seem to find problems and have to fix them, that sort of thing. So do you have a list of good ones or ones you have experience with?
Well, I don't think this is the time and place to have that conversation. But if you read my blog, I reference Stu Green's blog, and in his blog, he goes into great detail about all the tools that he used and what their strengths and weaknesses were, and how he came to a certain set of prototyping tools that he uses. But I think for each person, that's their own journey. I also think that these tools are evolving so quickly that, you know, anything we talk about today may be defunct next week. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. But
Do you have
again,
a link to your blog post?
I just dropped the link in the chat, and that,
All right, cool,
has
thanks.
both Sean's link, and then in his blog he links to Stu Green's, which I recommend everyone read as well. It's really interesting. But we and I will name drop a couple just to kind of go against the grain. Is Replit is one that people have had success with. I enjoy Lovable. That does have the Figma integration, and then another one people have been using is Bolt.new. So this kind of takes an agentic
Yep.
AI
And
approach.
Stu talks about those in great detail in his article.
Yep. And then we have another message on chat. Luke Lewis says, I have recently re-identified and rebranded myself as product builder rather than a product designer. So there's another point to your data set.
There you go. There you go. All right. Stu Green has coined a term that is now spreading. All right. We're running out of time, and I still have a couple more slides to get through. So the last part of the phase, of course, is the coding and the building. And I think this audiences know that with the AI tools now, you can do enterprise-wide security and compliance guidance. You can speed up the code review. And one of my favorite things, because I'm a designer, is that you can have accessibility from the beginning of the product instead of something that's bolted down at the end. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump to the summary. So AI enables technologies to simulate human learning, analyze data, make recommendations. AI shortens the journey from the early stages to the deployment. AI can help products deliver customer value sooner. It can help more good ideas see the day of light as long as we get good data. And it can help the product manager have that whole end-to-end oversight. And as we all know, it can help with the automation of coding. We only have a minute left. Is there any other questions or discussion points that we can do very quickly?
Yeah, anyone that wants to ask, let's see. Lily said, I really appreciate this presentation. It's given me a lot to think about.
Well, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Quick question on how do you get from you talked about like a solopreneur going from MVP like to scaling it up. That you said you covered that in a blog post. What was the title of that one?
Oh, Stu Green did, and it's in the comments.
All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, I think we're at time. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us today and all the great topics that we covered and explore. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can get me at sean@vantinegroup.com. You can visit my website, vantinegroup.com. We just redesigned it, so I love feedback. Or you can link with me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.